Next up in our Photoshop Basics series, we're going to talk about layer effects. Layer effects. This is one of the many options in Photoshop for non-destructive editing. You're going to hear me talk about this a lot in the class. This concept of non-destructive editing. The idea is, if at all possible, you want to do edits to your photos, text, shapes, whatever you're creating, non-destructively. What that means is something that you could get rid of without affecting the original content. Reason being, you may be working on a design, not like it, you want to change it. Boss might not like it, client might not like it. You don't want to permanently destroy or change or alter existing pixels if you can help it. That's like a last resort. You want to be able to quickly change or undo any edits that you're working on. That's non-destructive editing. People that don't know what they're doing, people that aren't good designers, they're going to destroy pixels, do all that. We're going to learn how to work smart, okay? And one of those things that non-destructive edits are layer effects. So we talked about layers in a previous tutorial. So I want to show you how we can use layer effects to create depth within an image. So if you don't have the starter file open, please go to the website and download it and open the starter file. Once you do that, you can see you should have something like I have here, where we have 2 lines of text, 2 shapes, and then a white background layer. First thing we're going to do is I want to change this white background layer from a white background layer to a texture layer, a layer with texture. Now, you can download textures. You can take a picture of something and drag it in and have a photo as a texture. But there's also a layer effect that we can use to create a texture. We cannot do that to a background layer, right? Background layers are locked. So I'm going to unlock our background layer. Then I'm going to come down here to the bottom of the layers panel, and you're going to see something called FX for add a layer style. And a layer style is a combination of layer effects. So all of these here in this list are layer effects, and you can have more than one on a layer. And however you use those, or a combination of those, that creates a layer style. One thing to think about is from top to bottom is the order they would appear, like a stacking order of layers. And these final 2, outer glow and drop shadow, if we were applying it to text, for example, these 2 layer effects go behind the object or behind the text. And these other ones go above the object or above the text. We're going to do a pattern overlay to simulate a texture. So I'm going to click on that. And the layer style window opens, and automatically pattern overlay is checkmarked as active and should be highlighted. If not, click on it, because that's going to give you options specific to that layer effect. And each layer effect is going to have its own blend mode and own opacity. I want you to reset the default just to make sure we're at the same starting point. And you can see here that already, since I have preview turned on, this lines are added as a pattern. I can click the down arrow and I can click through some of these textures or patterns. And you can see some are good, some are really bad. But it looks like there's not too many. However, under this wheel right here, I can click on that. You can load patterns that somebody gives you, or you download, or you create in another project. And then there are more built-in patterns within Photoshop. So let's say I pick rock patterns. This dialog box is going to pop up and it says, do you want to replace current patterns with the patterns from rock patterns? If you click OK, all of these will disappear, and whatever patterns are within rock patterns will replace them. If you click append, these will stay and the new ones will be added. So if I click append, you can see that the originals stay, new ones are added. If I roll over them, they will kind of give us a title. So I'm going to pick this one, light marble. All right, click out, and I'm going to click OK. So I have a pattern overlay that's light marble. If I decide I don't like it, I can turn the effects off, all effects, or just that individual effect. And since it's non-destructive, I can double click on it. I can come in and make changes and change my idea. I'm going to leave that for now. Then I come up here, and in the starter file I have 3 effects. They're kind of complicated, so I didn't want to go through them. In the video it would take too long, but you can click on them and see what I did. You're going to see right here I have these rectangles, and I am going to turn the effects on. And this combination of bevel and emboss, inner shadow, and gradient overlay, if you look, it made it create depth to where this looks like a raised border and it looks like this is sunken in, right? Creating that illusion of depth. It's still a flat image, but by using layer effects, I created that illusion of depth. And like I said, if you wanted to, you can double click and come in and see some of the settings and see kind of how it works. You can also, if we cancel out, you can see what happens if you turn certain ones off. So we can also, if this starts to get crowded and we don't want to see all the effects, we can click like this and close them up to give us more room in our layers panel. Let's come up to, let's make sure I'm working on the right one. So this one's the top one. So I'm going to click on this, come down to my layer effects, and in this one I want to add a drop shadow. Very, very common to add a drop shadow, one of the main layer effects used. Remember, this is going to go behind the text. So you can see it here behind the text. I'm going to reset to default so we're in the same starting point. You want to make sure that drop shadow is highlighted and check marked. One other thing you'll notice is there is a plus sign on some of these. That means you can add multiple instances of this effect. If I click that, I can do 2 different types of drop shadows. I'm going to delete it because we don't need it. Couple things about drop shadows. People that don't know what they're doing, which won't be you for very long, tend to just come in and keep the drop shadow black. What I find to be much more effective is to pull a contrasting color from within the design that you're working on. So how can I do that? I can double click to pull up my color picker, and I can come outside of the color picker window and I can pick something from inside my existing document. All right, and you can even, once you pick something, you can modify it here. You can say, okay, I'm going to round this out, make it something like this. Not saying you have to do this, but you could do something like that. I'm going to click OK. We can't really see it. We can adjust our opacity on the drop shadow. You have a drop shadow angle, and this is actually the angle of the light source. So the drop shadow will be in the opposite direction of your angle. You have the ability to extend the distance. All right, so if I go to the right, how far, right? And the light's coming from up here, so the shadow is going to go opposite, which is down, and the distance is how far from the original layer item do you want it to go. The spread is how far, or not really how far, but if it goes way low, you notice it's dark to light. So it's how much the shadow is filled in. That's 100%. And if I turn opacity to 100, it's 100 of this color, 100% spread, which means it's the full color from inside to out. And the size is, whoop, it got really big, way too big. Let's go smaller, maybe down like something like that. that's the size of it, kind of like a stroke, just kind of like making the stroke bigger, but the drop shadow bigger. I'm going to go back down to maybe 5 on that, make our spread something like this. Oh, we can also click in here. Notice your values over here change, and I use it this way a lot. Instead of the sliders, I just kind of move things to where I want them to go, something like that. And then I can click OK. I could, again, adjust the opacity down, maybe go down to like 75, and click OK. And I have that drop shadow using a color pulled in from the text. If I pick this one, I'm going to add another effect, and I'm going to do an inner shadow. And the inner shadow goes on top, and what it does is gives the illusion like it's stamped in, right? Like the text is going into the thing underneath, making an impression. I'm not going to go through all these settings again, right? Because we did that. You can hit reset to default just in case we're not on the same one. But you'll notice when it's selected, very similar settings to what we did on drop shadow. Same thing, you can drag them and do stuff like this. I might make the size, ooh, maybe not that big. I'm working at pretty small. So maybe 7 there, and then the choke point, just to make it stand out more, maybe something like 20, right? If I turn the preview on and off, you can kind of see it. Clicking OK to keep that in there. So here we have a drop shadow that goes behind the text and makes it look like it's popping off the background. On this one, we added an inner shadow, which goes on top of the text, kind of makes it look like it's indented into the background, depending on how you look at it. So that's how you can, oh, here, let me open this one up. And these are 3 different layer effects all together. That makes a layer style. And that's how you can do non-destructive editing using layer effects to your layers. There are tons of other ones in there. I'm not going to go through them all. We might see 1 or 2 more tutorials on it, but experiment. Just see what they do. That's the best way. You can always undo it. Click on them and look at the other layer effects. Get an idea what they do. And hopefully that helps get you started with the concept of layer effects.